Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into something a lot of men wonder about but rarely get honest answers to. What actually goes on in a woman's mind when you're no longer around the way you used to be? Most men assume that if they step back, a woman either forgets about them quickly or simply moves on without much thought. But female psychology is often more layered than that. When your presence suddenly disappears, it can trigger a range of emotions in a woman that she may not even fully understand at first. This is important to understand because absence changes the emotional dynamic. When you're always available, always texting, always showing up, there's little space for reflection. But when that constant presence stops, a woman suddenly has time to process how she truly felt about you and the role you played in her life. I end this video. We're going to break down what a woman actually feels during your absence and why that period of silence can sometimes have a stronger emotional impact than your presence ever did. Understanding this can help you see relationships and attraction from a much clearer perspective. 1. The silence hits harder than you think when you're no longer around. The first thing a woman feels isn't always sadness. It's silence. And that silence feels strange in a way most men don't expect. Not loud. Not dramatic, just unfamiliar. The absence of your messages, your presence, your energy creates a gap where something used to be. And that gap quietly starts to work on her. At first, she may barely notice it consciously. Her days continue. She talks to friends. She scrolls. She keeps busy. But underneath all of that, her nervous system is adjusting to the loss of a familiar emotional pattern. You were part of her routine, whether she admitted it or not. Even if she wasn't fully invested, your presence anchored something. When that anchor disappears, the emotional system doesn't just move on instantly, it recalibrates. This is where men often assume nothing is happening. No texts, no calls, no signs. But silence is not emptiness. Silence is processing. It's her mind slowly realizing that access to you is no longer guaranteed. And that realization lands differently depending on how you showed up when you were there. If you were consistent, calm, and emotionally grounded, the silence feels heavier. She starts noticing small things a moment she would have shared with you, a habit that involved you, a conversation that now has nowhere to go. That's when the thought creeps in, he's really not here anymore. Not in a panicked way, but in a grounded, unsettling way. What makes this powerful is that the silence removes stimulation. When you were present, she didn't have to sit with her feelings. Now she does. There's no quick reassurance, no easy access, no emotional safety net. And that forces her to confront how much emotional space you actually occupied. For some women, this creates discomfort. For others, curiosity. For others, a quiet sense of loss they can't fully explain. But almost all women feel the shift. Silence changes the emotional temperature. It slows everything down. And when things slow down, feelings surface. Here's the part men need to understand. The silence doesn't hurt because you're gone, it hurts because it removes control. She can't predict you anymore. She can't assume you'll be there. And that uncertainty triggers awareness. This is why chasing, over-explaining, or breaking the silence too soon weakens your position. It interrupts her natural emotional process. Silence, when it's genuine and not forced, gives her space to feel what she actually feels, not what she tells herself she feels, and that's when absence starts doing its real work. 2. Why she feels relief before she feels lost. This part confuses a lot of men because it sounds backwards. When you disappear, one of the first emotions a woman may feel is relief. Not because she didn't care, but because emotional tension has finally stopped. If things between you had uncertainty, pressure, mixed signals, or emotional intensity, your absence removes that weight. No more wondering where things are going. No more reading into messages. No more emotional effort. And for a moment, that feels lighter, calmer, easier. Men often misread this phase and think, she's fine without me. I meant nothing. That's a mistake. Relief is not closure. Relief is a pause. It's the nervous system taking a breath after stimulation has ended. And once that calm settles, something else tends to follow. After relief comes awareness, When the emotional noise is gone, she starts noticing what's missing. The emotional engagement, the masculine presence, the way you made her feel seen, challenged, grounded, or desired. But this doesn't happen instantly, and that's why men get impatient and break the distance too early. Women process emotionally in layers. First, the surface reaction, then the deeper emotional truth. Relief belongs to the surface layer. Loss belongs to the deeper one. Here's something important. Relief often exists because she cared. When someone matters, emotional involvement takes energy. When that energy demand suddenly stops, the system relaxes. But once relaxed, the absence becomes clearer. The calm turns into quiet, and the quiet turns into reflection. This is when thoughts start to shift from "this is easier" to "something feels off." She may not label it as missing you yet. It shows up as restlessness, mild irritation, a feeling that something's missing, even if she can't explain what. Another thing men overlook is ego. When you're gone, her ego doesn't get validation from you anymore. No attention, no reassurance, no emotional feedback. That hits later, not immediately. And when it does, it triggers questions about her importance to you and about yours to her. If you interrupt this process by reaching out too soon, you rob her of that realization. You turn relief into comfort again. And comfort kills curiosity. The truth is simple but uncomfortable. Relief doesn't mean she's over you. It means she hasn't felt the absence deeply yet. That comes later, if you allow it. 3. Her mind starts replaying moments with you once the initial calm fades. Her mind starts doing something she can't fully control. It replays moments with you. Not the bad ones first. Not the arguments or tension. It's the small, emotionally charged moments that surface. The way you looked at her. A conversation that felt real. A laugh that felt effortless. A feeling she didn't label at the time. This replay doesn't happen because she's trying to miss you. It happens because the brain fills emotional gaps with memory. When something meaningful disappears, the mind looks backward to make sense of the absence. And the more emotionally grounded you were, the more those moments carry weight. Here's what men often misunderstand. Women don't miss words as much as they miss feelings. She's not replaying what you said, she's replaying how she felt when she was around you. Safe, excited, desired, calm, challenged. Those emotional imprints linger far longer than conversations. This is also where comparison begins. Whether she admits it or not, she starts measuring other interactions against the emotional standard you set. Other men feel flatter. Conversations feel forced. Attention feels empty. And that contrast quietly elevates your value in her mind, not because you tried to prove anything, but because absence sharpened perspective. What makes this stage powerful is that it's internal. She may not reach out. She may not show signs. But emotionally, you're present again, this time without effort. And that presence feels stronger because it's not accessible. Another key point men miss. Memory tends to soften edges over time. The emotional mind filters out noise and highlights what mattered. That's why absence can work when constant presence didn't. You're no longer competing with daily irritation or routine. You exist now as a feeling. This is also where confusion can show up for her. She may ask herself why she's thinking about you if things weren't perfect. That confusion is a sign of unresolved emotional attachment. And unresolved feelings don't disappear. They look for resolution. If you break the silence here, you shift the dynamic back into real-time interaction, where emotions are messy and reactive. If you don't, the emotional story continues developing in her mind, often in your favor. This stage isn't about manipulation. It's about allowing natural emotional processing to complete. When a woman replays moments with you during your absence, it means you mattered more than she realized when you were present. For absence forces her to reevaluate your value when you're no longer available. A woman is forced to reassess something she didn't consciously question before, your value in her life. Not in an abstract way, but in a practical, emotional sense. What did you actually add? What did you represent? What changed now that you're gone? While you were present, your value may have felt constant and accessible. That accessibility can dull perception. Humans often don't fully measure value until access is removed. And for women, emotional value becomes clearer in contrast, not comfort. Your absence disrupts assumptions. She can no longer assume you'll be there to listen, to support, to show up emotionally. That removal triggers evaluation. Was he just someone who was around, or someone who genuinely made my life better? This is where men who overgive or overpursue hurt themselves. If you are always available, always accommodating, always trying to please, your absence doesn't create mystery. It creates relief without reflection. But if you showed up with boundaries, self-respect, and emotional stability, your absence leaves a noticeable gap. Another important shift happens here: power dynamics. When you were present and engaged, she didn't need to think about losing you. When you're gone, the dynamic flips. She's no longer the emotional center. She's now responding to the removal of someone else's presence. That alone changes how she perceives your importance. This stage also challenges her narrative. If she told herself she didn't care that much, your absence tests that belief. If she felt emotionally secure because you were consistent, your absence exposes how much she relied on that consistency. And here's the part men should really understand: value isn't proven through words. It's felt through absence. When someone leaves and life feels unchanged, their value is minimal. When someone leaves and something feels off, unsettled, or emotionally quieter, their value becomes undeniable. This reevaluation doesn't mean she will come back. It means clarity is forming, and clarity is necessary for real desire to exist. Without it, attraction stays shallow. Your absence doesn't force her to choose you. It forces her to see you clearly. And sometimes, that clarity is exactly what creates emotional pull. 5. Why she feels you more when you're gone. There's a strange emotional truth women don't always talk about. Sometimes a man is felt more deeply in his absence than in his presence. Not because he changed, but because the noise around the connection disappeared. When you were there, emotions were spread across interactions, expectations, moods, and daily dynamics. When you're gone, all of that collapses into one thing: feeling. And feeling, without distraction, becomes intense. Imagine her having a moment that should feel satisfying: a small win, a laugh with friends, a quiet evening. On the surface, everything is fine. But underneath, there's a sense that something is missing. Not in a desperate way, just a subtle emotional echo. That's when your presence is felt the strongest. What's happening psychologically is simple. The mind notices absence when emotional contrast exists. If you brought emotional depth, calm, or excitement into her life, removing it creates a vacuum. And vacuums pull attention. This is also where emotional imagination takes over. When someone is no longer physically or emotionally accessible, the mind fills in gaps. She starts imagining how you would react, what you would say, how you would show up in that moment. And imagination often amplifies emotion more than reality ever did. Here's the part men struggle with: this feeling doesn't mean she'll reach out. Feeling doesn't always lead to action. Women often sit with emotion first. They observe it. They test it internally. Reaching out comes later, if at all. Another layer here is emotional safety. When you're gone, she can feel without risking vulnerability. She doesn't have to admit anything. She doesn't have to act. That makes the feeling safer to experience, and therefore stronger. Men sometimes sabotage this phase by trying to remind her of themselves. But the reminder is already happening internally. You don't need to reinsert yourself. In fact, doing so reduces the emotional depth she's experiencing. Feeling someone in absence is a sign of emotional imprint. You left a mark. And marks don't fade quickly when they're tied to genuine emotional experiences. Your absence allows her to feel you without distraction. And that's often when emotions become most honest. 6. The emotional push and pull inside her at the stage. Things inside her start to feel contradictory. One moment she feels calm and in control. The next, she feels unsettled and drawn back to thoughts of you. This emotional push and pull is one of the clearest signs that your absence is working on her internally. On one side, there's pride. She tells herself she's fine, that she's handling things well, that she doesn't need to reach out. On the other side, there's emotion, curiosity, longing, unresolved feelings she didn't expect to still be there. These two sides don't cancel each other out. They coexist. This inner conflict is uncomfortable. And when humans feel emotional tension, they look for resolution. For women, that resolution often comes through understanding their feelings before acting on them. She's not trying to ignore you, she's trying to make sense of why you still matter. Another thing happening here is loss of emotional leverage. When you were present, she knew where she stood. She had access. She had reassurance, even if she didn't consciously think about it. Your absence removes that leverage. And when leverage is gone, attraction often increases. This is also where self-questioning begins. She may ask herself why your absence affects her more than expected, why other attention doesn't land the same way, why silence feels louder than words. Those questions don't come from logic, they come from emotional attachment. Men often underestimate this phase because it's invisible. There are no obvious signs. But internally, this is where attachment deepens or dissolves. And the outcome depends heavily on how you showed up before you left. If you were reactive, needy, or inconsistent, the push and pull leans toward emotional release. If you were grounded, self-respecting, and emotionally steady, the pull grows stronger. The key takeaway for men is this: emotional tension is not a bad thing. It's a sign of investment. Your job isn't to relieve it. It's to let it resolve naturally. 7. What your absence reveals about you as a man. This is where things turn back to you, and it's where many men need to be honest with themselves. A woman's reaction to your absence isn't just about her. It's a reflection of how you showed up as a man. If your absence creates emotional movement inside her, it means you had weight. You weren't just filling space. You weren't just available. You represented something: stability, challenge, presence, or emotional depth. That doesn't happen by accident. But if your absence creates nothing, that's feedback. And instead of blaming women or psychology, men need to look inward. Were you centered in your own life? Did you lead emotionally, or were you seeking validation? Did you bring calm, or did you bring pressure? Here's the constructive criticism men often avoid. Many men try to be unforgettable by doing more, saying more, giving more. But what actually leaves a mark is self-respect, emotional restraint, and knowing when to step back. Over-explaining, over-pursuing, and over-investing don't deepen attraction, they drain it. Absence only works when it's natural. If you disappear as a tactic, it feels empty. But if you step back because you value yourself, that energy is felt. Women sense intention even without communication. Your absence should never be about teaching her a lesson. It should be about protecting your peace and staying aligned with your standards. When a man walks away calmly, without anger or begging, it communicates strength. And strength is remembered. So ask yourself this honestly. If you disappeared today, what would she feel? Relief, curiosity, regret, or nothing at all? The answer isn't something to fear. It's something to learn from. Men who reflect, adjust, and grow don't need to force attraction. Their presence and absence speaks for them. A woman doesn't miss a man because he tried harder. She misses him because he knew when to step back. And that single shift in perspective changes everything. Your absence isn't about disappearing to be remembered. It's about creating space for truth to surface. Sometimes that truth is attraction. Sometimes it's indifference. And sometimes it's a realization she didn't expect. But without space, none of that clarity can exist. If a woman feels you during your absence, it means you mattered in a real way. Not because you chased, explained, or proved yourself, but because you showed up with presence, boundaries, and self-respect. And if she doesn't feel much at all, that's not a failure. That's information. It tells you where you need to grow, recalibrate, and raise your standards. What matters most is what you do with the silence. Do you panic and reach out for reassurance? Or do you stay grounded, focused, and aligned with your own life? The man who can sit comfortably in his own absence is the man who naturally commands respect and attraction. I'd really like to hear your experience. Have you ever noticed a woman change after you stepped back? Did silence work in your favor or reveal something you didn't want to see? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them and I respond. Let's actually talk about this. Not just watch and scroll. If this message hits something real for you, take it seriously. Absence isn't a trick. It's a mirror. And what it shows, you can change how you move with women if you're willing to learn.